Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name is FPL Phillips and this is your Game Week 3 episode of Eddie versus the Algorithm. You guys probably know what this is by now, but if you're new around here for some reason, it's the season where we're taking on the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm each week of the season, week for week, seeing the highest projected points team that the computer can put together. I'm putting together a free hit team of my own and seeing if I can outscore it 4 points in each game week, and I've got my own to get back because last season I ended up drawing with the algorithm, so this year I'm out for vengeance, and I've had a pretty decent start of the season. I came away with the win in game week 1, but before we get into having a look at the game week 3 team, we need to have a little bit of a quick recap of how things went in game week 2. And first of all, we're going to have a bit of a recap then of the algorithm side, and a 63 point total, I should say, was a rather respectable finish. Phil Foden in the midfield, I think, was the real highlight, as well as the double Aston Villa defence. Going with Salah as the captain wasn't a particularly controversial move, I don't think, in Game Week 2. I think most people who did own him did decide to go there with the armband, but it didn't make all the difference over in the end. Only 3 points extra to Haaland's point total when he blanked against Newcastle. I like that Awoniyi shout up front as well. Watkins picking up a return too, as mentioned, that Aston Villa defence, keeping a clean sheet, and then Phil Foden, which was unlucky to not have more than the 9 points he ended up with, really. Only the one return, and then, of course, the full bonus, giving him that total score. But a 63 point total was going to be rather hard to beat, but in the end, I ended up actually coming away with the victory. I scored 72 points in this game week with my team that I went with, largely thanks to, firstly, Mbomo in my midfield, Estupinian in defence, Martinez as well in goal. I still went with Villa defensive asset, but I went with him. And then James getting injured didn't actually turn out to be the worst thing, because I had Henry's 5 points to come off the bench. I also went with another Liverpool asset in my midfield, so went with Luis Diaz, who did pay off. The only real major disappointments in my team, other than Haaland, were probably Gibbs White in the midfield, who probably could have got something, but I was a bit of a risk going with that double Nottingham Forest attack. And then Bukayo Saka, who probably should have had a return, but I wouldn't have predicted him giving away the penalty like that. So overall, I was rather happy with my side. Of course, Chilwell was a bit of a letdown in defence as well. But yeah, still very happy to come away with the victory, and that of course puts me 2-0 up in the series so far. So the algorithm's got some work to do to come back into things, but let's get into having a look at how the computer-generated team is lining up for Game Week 3. And after the rather rogue 4-3-3 formation last week, the algorithm's back to a more bog-standard template one. It's a 3-5-2 for the algo, and in goal is going to be Flecken of Brentford, who I think is a really good goalkeeping option over the next couple of game weeks for people to pick up in their sides, who I'm not really seeing talked about at all right now. In just the context of general FPL, a lot of people have 2 free transfers at the moment, and some people may be in the privileged position where they don't have any obvious solutions to where they want to use it. Maybe you want to keep the Man United attackers one more week, you want to keep the Arsenal attackers one more week, you want to hang on to João Pedro now that Enciso is out injured, you want to hang on to Gabriel as he may well start this game in Game Week 3 as well. And so if you own someone like a Jordan Pickford, then this could maybe be the week where if you've got 2 free transfers, just to use one on moving him across to Flecken, who at 4.5 is my favourite keeper of the bunch at that price point, and have him in instead. And not only do I think he's a great keeper because Brentford themselves are a great defence, but they also have fantastic fixtures where they only really have a tough game in Game Week 5, and at that point, you can bring in Turner, who's the 4.0 million keeper that most people have on the bench at the moment, play him in that game week, just like we've kind of seen in Game Week 2 with a lot of people bringing Turner in. It didn't go too well in Game Week 2, of course, but arguably could have had a clean sheet. So again, definitely not opposed to doing that and bringing in Turner for a game where, say, Brentford are facing Newcastle and then Nottingham Forest are facing Burnley. It's pretty obvious where the better fixture is there on paper, and so I would not be against at all bringing in Flecken, just playing Turner the 1 week and playing Flecken the rest of the time. So I really like him as an option. I think a lot of people are looking at Robert Sanchez if they're looking at a goalkeeper, but Chelsea signing another goalkeeper who's been quoted as being competition for Robert Sanchez would be putting me off. One thing to do with this week in particular, which of course is kind of the premise of this video, is that I think Crystal Palace are a decent side, although they've not been scoring many goals to start the season off at all. I do think that they are decent. Maybe away from home it's going to be more tricky for them. Brentford are at home in that fixture. but I think they have to start scoring goals. And I think at periods in the game against Arsenal, they did look dominant, and especially after the red card, of course. But yeah, I think Palace are going to start scoring. Whether it will be in this game, I'm not too sure. But I really like Flecken as an option regardless. And I think, yeah, definitely, as I mentioned, if you're looking for a goalkeeper, he's definitely the one I'd be in the market for that I'm not seeing a lot of light shone on at the moment, at least. In defence then, we've got a back three of 2 Chelsea defenders of Chilwell and probably one you're not expecting of Thiago Silva and then Estupinian. And so these numbers here aren't the prices, they're the predicted points totals, which is why they might look a little bit off. They are actually completely different. Flecken is just a coincidence that he was predicted 4.5 points. Chilwell at 5.7 million that he's priced at now is predicted 5.4 points in that nice game at home to Luton, and it seems like a rather obvious pick, as does Estupinian with the attacking form that Brighton are in and how involved he looks up at the attacking end of the pitch. Another one with a home fixture against a team like West Ham, I'd be very happy to have in my side for this week. Thiago Silva definitely wouldn't be my second option as a Chelsea defender. I would much prefer to have Gusto in, or even maybe Colwill, who seems to present better value in that Chelsea side. I suppose you probably are going to get assured minutes from Thiago Silva, but you're not getting a lot past that unless maybe there's some kind of set-piece return you end up getting. But Gusto has traditionally been quite an attacking fullback. His heat map didn't look too bad against West Ham as well. He was getting forward a decent amount at the time. With Chilwell so attacking on the opposite side, there's going to be a limit to how far up he can push up the pitch. But as of right now, Gusto's definitely my second choice Chelsea defender behind Ben Chilwell, of course. In midfield, we are going to see a midfield 5 featuring some of the players that people are considering taking out this week, namely Marcus Rashford is probably the one to note there. We've then got Martin Odegaard and Bukayo Saka as an Arsenal double up alongside him, with Phil Foden up against Sheffield United, and then Heung-min Son finally making it in here as probably the most differential pick of this midfield, and predicted 5.5 points for that away game against Bournemouth at the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. So I like Rashford in here. If you needed some confirmation that maybe keeping Rashford for one more week is the right route, then maybe this can be your confirmation bias that you needed. But Saka and Odegaard, again, same boat as kind of Martinelli. With the predicted points we saw yesterday, he kind of creeps in there as well. It's a very nice game at home to Fulham for whichever kind of combination of the Arsenal mids you have. But if you have these two in at the moment, you're hoping that you probably cover whichever one of them ends up taking the penalty. You'd think Saka will be back on them a little bit more permanently now maybe, but there might be the occasion where it's given to Odegaard, or I suppose maybe someone else at this point as well. We're yet to see. Haaland gave penalties away to Mahrez and other players last season. Maybe a similar kind of situation and predicament will occur with Saka giving away penalties to Odegaard. You'd think it would be mainly, I suppose, as the second penalty taker. But Arsenal fans can let me know if you think there's any other men who might step up to take the spot kick from 12 yards. Phil Foden is definitely my favourite pick of the bunch from this side for this week. I think he's going to be in the Man City team for a few weeks to come now, hopefully, touch wood and all that. They have signed Doku and are looking at more attackers. I've seen rumours even with them with links to SA today and other attacking midfielders and forward options. So there may well be some more transfer business before the transfer window does slam shut, which is around game week 4. I think that occurs. So bringing in Foden has still come with an element of risk, but I suppose it always does, no matter how nailed a Man City midfield option or attacker or even player in general looks. There is always a slight risk they'll come with. But you'd think with the form that he's been in and how integral he's looked to a lot of the Man City attacks, that he'll be an important part of the side continuing forward, and you'd hope that he'd be able to retain his position inside the starting 11, having played every minute of the campaign so far. And then finally, Heung-min Son, who's definitely my least favourite pick here, to be honest. Without Maddison in the side for game week 3, I think Spurs are arguably going to struggle away at Bournemouth. I don't think that will be the easy fixture that maybe some people are noting it down as. I like Udogie from Spurs, and like I said, if Maddison was fit, I'd have a lot more confidence in them. But I think that puts me off the Spurs side altogether. A lot of the attacking play has gone through him so far this year, and if he's out with this minor injury, which hopefully shouldn't have him out for too long, then that kind of writes me off going for any Spurs attacking asset, in truth be told. And then finally, up front, we're going to, of course, have Erling Haaland as the captain, alongside Nicholas Jackson, who seems to be the kind of standout second striker to go with at the moment. Certainly one of the most transferred in amongst experts who are looking for a forward. But I think in a lot of cases, that's for João Pedro, who, as I mentioned earlier in the video, now has Enciso injured, who's his competition, really, for that spot behind the striker. And you'd like to think that João Pedro will probably come back into the team for at least this game week. And if the Enciso injury is looking more serious, which is kind of being alluded that it might be, then he might have his minutes assured for even longer than that. The problem is just mainly long-term that the Brighton fixtures don't look too good over the next couple, but maybe waiting that extra week, holding João Pedro just on for this one, might give you that extra week's worth of info that you need to make a call on whether you want to go for Jackson, or maybe whether you want someone else like an Alvarez, or maybe even a Visser instead, who also look like good picks at the moment. And then finally, down there on the bench, we've got Cabore, and I've also gone with Osula, and we've also got Aldical, who, to be honest, I don't know who that is down there on the bench as well. So yeah, my Premier League knowledge is not brilliant. I'll admit that. I mainly look at FPL adverts, and I don't even know who that is. But yeah, we'll move into my team now anyway, and swiftly move on from that slight embarrassment. But this team is predicted 66 points for Game Week 3. My team, on the other hand, is predicted 2 points less at 64. But that's pretty close to the algorithm's predicted points total, which I don't usually get to, despite having quite a different looking team. I've gone with Edison in goal, using 5.5 million of the budget up on him, and I've still kept Chilwell and Estepinian, but instead gone with Luke Shaw, because I do think United will finally show some form at home to Nottingham Forest. For that reason, I've also brought in Bruno Fernandes into my midfield, and I've had him alongside Saka, Foden, and Marcus Rashford. And then finally, the last change up front, I've brought in Eddie Nketiah alongside Erling Haaland and Nicholas Jackson. So there aren't too many changes, actually, I suppose, when we look and compare both the teams together. But I have got a different looking bench with Gusto, as I mentioned, as my favourite second Chelsea defender coming in. I've also then gone with Bailey and Cabore as well as two options who hopefully won't be called upon for this game week at least. But yeah, so that's gonna round things up, I suppose. We can discover that Alcala is actually a Burnley player then, because they're playing Aston Villa, of course, this game week. I've learned something new today. Maybe you guys have been helped out with this video as well. I definitely hope you have. Nketiah as the final pick, I think, is the one that maybe you guys will call me out on, but I like it as a little bit of a punt. He's looked promising over the first two game weeks. He's definitely got a lot of chances. Should have and would have scored against Crystal Palace if things had gone differently on maybe another day. And maybe that other day can come when Arsenal face off against Fulham. I quite like it as a pun. It's just for one game week, I suppose. I can take a little bit more of a risk and have some more fun with this series, which is nice to be able to do. But I hope you guys have had fun as well watching the video, and that you have enjoyed or found it informative. Make sure to leave a thumbs up if you did, and if you want to check out all sorts of team reveals, not only from the computer, but also from our elite managers, make sure to check out the links to Fantasy Football Fix down below in the description. I hope to catch you in the next video. Make sure to subscribe if you're, of course, new around here, and I'll catch you all in the next video, hopefully. Take care, and goodbye.